Hey, horror fans. Before you zip up that tent, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment with your city and what time you're watching. This helps YouTube bring you more bone-chilling tales like these. Tonight, we're stoking the campfire for 8 true campground horror stories, pulled straight from the creepiest corners of Reddit. Campers, hikers, and outdoor lovers share the terrifying moments they faced under the stars. Creatures in the trees, footsteps, circling tents at midnight, and voices that echo from nowhere. From remote trails to seemingly peaceful campsites, these stories will make you think twice before spending the night in the great outdoors. So, grab a flashlight, stay close to the fire, and let's get into it, because, in the woods, you're never really alone. Story 1. The Whispering Stars Above the Forgotten Tomb. In the summer of 2018, a group of friends, Jake, Sarah, Mike, and Lisa, decided to camp in the remote hills of Vermont. They had heard about an old campground near a forgotten cemetery from the 1800s, where tall stone tombs stood like silent guards under the trees. The place was called Echo Woods, named for how sounds bounced off the rocky cliffs. But locals warned them, don't stare at the stars too long. They stare back. The friends laughed it off as silly talk and set up their tents by a small lake, surrounded by thick pines that blocked most of the sky. Jake was the leader, a tall guy with a love for adventure. He worked as a mechanic back home and always carried a flashlight and knife. Sarah, his girlfriend, was a teacher who loved reading old books about ghosts and mysteries. Mike was the funny one, a college student studying stars and space with a telescope in his pack. Lisa, Mike's sister, was quiet but brave, an artist who sketched whatever caught her eye. They arrived late afternoon, the sun dipping behind the hills, painting the sky orange and purple. The campground was empty, just a few fire pits and picnic tables overgrown with weeds. Nearby, through a path choked with vines, lay the cemetery. Gothic arches on the tombs, carved with faded names and strange symbols like eyes watching from the stone, gave it an old-world feel, like something from a forgotten castle. As night fell, they built a fire and roasted marshmallows, telling jokes and sharing beers. Mike set up his telescope, pointing it at the clear sky. "Look at that," he said, excited. "The Milky Way is so bright here, away from city lights. It's like the universe is alive." They took turns peering through the lens, seeing stars twinkle like distant fires. But as midnight approached, a strange chill swept through the camp. The fire flickered low, even though they added wood. Sarah shivered and pulled her jacket tight. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. A soft sound, like wind through leaves, but words hidden in it. "It's just the echo," Jake said, trying to sound sure. Mike adjusted his telescope again, focusing on a cluster of stars that seemed to pulse. "Guys, this is weird. These stars ... They're not in any chart, I know, like they're moving closer." Lisa sketched the sky in her notebook, her pencil flying across the page. The drawing showed stars forming a shape like a giant eye. The whispering grew louder, not from the wind, but from above. It sounded like voices from far away, speaking in a language none of them knew, old guttural words that made their skin crawl. Sarah grabbed Jake's arm. "It's coming from the stars," she said, her voice shaking. They looked up, and the sky seemed wrong. The stars weren't just points of light. They swirled slowly, like a vortex opening. In the cemetery, the tombs glowed faintly, as if lit from within. Mike's telescope shook in his hands. "This can't be real. Cosmic events don't happen like this. It's like ... Something's bridging space to here." Panic set in when Lisa screamed. Her sketchbook fell, and on the page, the eye she drew blinked ink moving on paper. "It's alive," she cried. They ran to the tents, but the whispering followed. Now, inside their heads, words formed. "We see you. Join us in the void." Jake tried to start the car, but the engine wouldn't turn. The battery was dead, drained like something sucked the life out. The fire went out completely, plunging them into darkness broken only by the eerie glow from the tombs. They huddled together, hearts pounding. Sarah remembered a story from her books, a Gothic tale of ancient stargazers who built tombs to call beings from the cosmos. They thought stars were gods, she said, but they were horrors, entities that feed on fear. As the night deepened, shadows from the cemetery crept toward the camp. Tall figures, not human, with limbs like twisted branches and eyes like black holes. They moved silently, drawn by the whispers. Mike whispered, "Cosmic horror, like Lovecraft wrote. The universe is full of things we can't understand." One shadow reached Lisa first. She froze, her eyes wide as it touched her. A cold wave passed through her, and she collapsed, murmuring about endless space and falling forever. The others dragged her back, but the shadows multiplied. Jake grabbed his knife, slashing at the air. "Stay back." But the blade passed through nothing. The whispers laughed, a sound like cracking ice across galaxies. Sarah suggested running to the tombs. "Maybe we can hide, or find a way to stop it." They stumbled through the path, the ground soft underfoot like it breathed. Inside the largest tomb, carvings on the walls showed people looking up, stars raining down like spears. The air inside was thick, smelling of dust and something metallic, like blood from stars. Mike touched a symbol, and it lit up. Visions flooded their minds, ancient peoples summoning cosmic beings through rituals, offering souls for knowledge. But the beings tricked them, pulling them into eternal darkness. Outside, the shadows banged on the tomb door, stone cracking. Lisa woke, but her eyes were wrung pupils, like swirling voids. "They're here," she said, in a voice not hers. "The old ones from beyond. They hunger." Terror gripped them. Jake barred the door with his body, sweat pouring. Sarah searched the walls for clues, finding a hidden chamber. Inside, a stone altar with a crystal that pulsed like a heart. Mike realized, it's a gateway. The crystal connects to the stars. He smashed it with a rock, shards flying. A scream echoed through the universe, not just in their ears, but in their souls. The shadows retreated, the whispers faded. The sky returned to normal, stars still and distant. They fled at dawn, leaving everything behind. Lisa never spoke of what she saw in the void, but her sketches after showed horrors no one should imagine: Gothic spires reaching into space, cosmic eyes watching Earth. Years later, they avoid campgrounds. Jake fixes cars but jumps at night sounds. Sarah burns her books. Mike quits studying stars, saying the cosmos isn't beautiful, it's a graveyard. Lisa's art sells, but viewers feel uneasy, like something watches back. That night in Echo Woods changed them. The universe isn't empty, it's full of ancient, Gothic terrors, waiting for a glance upward. If you camp there, don't look at the stars. They might look back. Story 2. The Shadowed Grove of Eternal Night. In the summer of 2020, deep in the wild forests of Oregon, a family of Fortum, Ellen, Ben, and Maya set out for a weekend camping trip in Blackthorn Grove. The place was a hidden pocket of wilderness, rarely visited, where ancient trees twisted like the spires of a Gothic cathedral, their gnarled branches clawing at the sky. Locals in the nearby town of Pine Hollow spoke of it in hushed tones, warning that the grove wasn't just a forest but a place where the veil between worlds was thin. "The stars there don't just shine," an old shopkeeper told Tom as he bought supplies. "They watch. Don't camp too long." Tom, a practical man who built houses for a living, brushed it off as small-town superstition. Ellen, his wife, was less sure. She loved old tales of knights and haunted castles, and something about the warning felt like it belonged in one of her books. Tom was broad-shouldered, with calloused hands from years of hammering nails and lifting beams. At 38, he prided himself on keeping his family safe, always carrying a pocket knife and a first aid kit. Ellen, 35, was a librarian with a soft voice and a sharp mind, her imagination fueled by Gothic novels and folklore. Their kids, Ben and Mia, were 12 and 10. Ben was a dreamer, obsessed with space and aliens, his backpack stuffed with a dog-eared book on extraterrestrial life and a small star chart. Mia, small for her age, clung to her stuffed teddy bear, Mr. Paws. Especially at night, she was brave but hated the dark. They drove their old SUV down a winding dirt road, the forest closing in as the sun sank low. Blackthorn Grove was unmarked, on maps, found only by following a faded sign half buried in moss. They arrived at dusk, the air heavy with the scent of pine and damp earth. The campground was a small clearing by a narrow stream, its waters glinting like liquid silver under the fading light. Towering trees surrounded them, their branches forming a canopy that let only slivers of sky peek through. In the distance, through a tangle of vines, stood the ruins of an old settlement, stone walls and arches, Gothic in their decay. Like a forgotten chapel swallowed by the forest, Tom set up their 2 tents, while Ellen unpacked the cooler, her eyes darting to the woods. "It's quiet here," she said, her voice low. Too quiet. No birds chirped, no squirrels rustled, just the soft gurgle of the stream and a faint breeze that felt oddly cold for summer. Ben, excited, was already scanning the sky with his star chart. No city lights. "I bet I'll see 100 constellations tonight," he said, grinning. Mia hugged Mr. Paws tighter, sticking close to her mom. As night fell, they built a fire in a stone-ringed pit, the flames casting long shadows that danced on the trees. Tom skewered hot dogs, and Ellen told stories of medieval ghosts, her voice weaving a cozy spell. But as the fire crackled, a thick fog rolled in, curling around, the trunks like ghostly fingers. The air grew colder, the stars above piercing through the mist like sharp, unblinking eyes. Ben pointed upward. "Look at that cluster. It's so red, like Mars, but ... pulsing." He squinted, confused. "That's not in my book." Ellen frowned, pulling her shawl tight. "Stars don't pulse like that, Ben. Maybe it's a plane." But no plane moved that way, and the red glow seemed to throb, slow and steady, like a heartbeat in the void. Mia whimpered, clutching her teddy. "I don't like it. It feels like it's looking at us." Tom laughed, trying to ease the tension. "It's just stars, kiddo. Nothing up there but gas and light." But his hand rested on his pocket knife, and he glanced at the woods. The fog thickened, muffling the stream's sound, and a faint whisper drifted through the air, not words, but a low chant, like voices from a forgotten time. It seemed to come from the trees, or maybe above, blending with the rustle of leaves. Ellen stood, her face pale. "Tom, do you hear that?" He nodded, gripping a stick from the fire. The whispers grew, not louder, but clearer, forming strange syllables no one understood, guttural, like a prayer to something not of Earth. Ben grabbed his star chart, hands shaking. "Dad, the stars are moving. They're not supposed to do that. It's like they're getting closer." Tom strode to the edge of the clearing, peering into the fog. "Stay here," he said, his voice firm but tight. He followed a narrow path toward the ruins, flashlight in hand. The beam caught glimpses of stone-crumbling walls, etched with symbols, Gothic arches draped in vines. One carving showed a figure, staring upward, hands raised to a sky filled with jagged stars. Tom's stomach twisted. The symbols looked too precise, too deliberate, like they were meant to call something. Back at the camp, Mia screamed. A shadow moved in the fog, tall and hooded, its outline barely human. Its eyes glowed like twin black stars, deep and endless. Ellen pulled Mia behind her, grabbing a burning branch from the fire. "Stay back," she shouted, but the shadow glided closer, silent, its presence heavy, like the air before a storm. Ben fumbled with his book, muttering, "It's not aliens, it's something worse, like cosmic gods or something." The shadow reached out, its arm long and thin, fingers like twisted roots. It brushed Mia's teddy, and the toy's button. Eyes seemed to blink. Mia dropped it, sobbing. Mr. Paws moved. He moved. Ellen swung the branch, but it passed through the shadow like smoke. More shapes appeared in the fog, circling the camp, their whispers now inside the family's heads. "See us. Join us in the dark." Tom ran back, his face white. "We need to go. Now." But the SUV's engine wouldn't start, the battery dead as if drained by an unseen force. The fire flickered, then died, plunging them into near darkness, broken only by the red pulse of those strange stars above. Ellen grabbed the kids, pulling them toward the stream, hoping to follow it out. But the path twisted, the trees seeming to shift, leading them back to the clearing. "It's like the grove won't let us leave," she whispered. Ben's eyes were wide. "It's not just the grove, it's the stars. They single quotes, alive." He pointed to the sky, where the red cluster now formed a shape-hen eye, vast and unblinking, staring down. The fog parted slightly, revealing the ruins again, their stones glowing faintly, as if lit by starlight from within. Ellen's mind raced to her Gothic tales, stories of ancient cults that worshipped things beyond the stars, beings that craved human fear and souls. The family ran toward the ruins, hoping for shelter. Inside, the air was thick, smelling of damp, stone, and something sharp, like ozone after lightning. The walls were covered in carvings, people pulled upward by shadowy tentacles, stars raining down like spears. A stone altar stood at the center, etched with a spiral that matched the sky's red eye. Mia clung to Ellen, whispering, "They're coming. The star things." Shadows poured into the ruins, their forms shifting, sometimes human, sometimes vast and formless, like voids given shape. Tom barred the wooden door with a fallen beam, but it shook under unseen blows. Ben, flipping through his book, shouted, "It's like Lovecraft cosmic horrors, things too big for us to understand." Ellen nodded, remembering a tale of a knight who defeated a demon by burning its altar. "We need to destroy it," she said, pointing to the spiral stone. Tom grabbed a rock, smashing it against the altar. Sparks flew, but the stone held. The whispers grew louder, now a chorus of voices promising eternal knowledge if they surrendered. Mia's teddy, lying in the corner, spoke in a low growl. "Look up. Become one with us." Mia screamed, and Ellen kicked the toy into the shadows. Ben noticed a carving, a figure lighting a fire on the altar to banish the dark. "Fire," he yelled. Tom tore fabric from his shirt, wrapping it around a stick. Ellen found a lighter in her pocket, and they lit a makeshift torch. The flame roared to life, but it burned blue, unnatural, casting eerie shadows. They held it to the altar, and the stone cracked, a scream echoing not from the ruins, but from the sky itself. A sound like 1,000 voices, breaking across galaxies. The shadows retreated, dissolving into the fog. The red eye in the sky blinked out, stars returning to their cold, distant places. The whispers faded, leaving only the stream's soft gurgle. The family stumbled out, exhausted, as dawn broke, the fog lifting like a curtain. They packed in silence, leaving the tents and cooler behind. The SUV started on the first try, as if nothing had happened. Driving away, they didn't look back. Blackthorn Grove was no longer just a forest, it was a gateway, a Gothic cathedral to cosmic horrors that watched from beyond. Back home, Tom sold his tools, unable to work in dark spaces. Ellen burned her Gothic novels, their pages too close to truth. Ben gave up his space books, saying the stars weren't dreams, but nightmares. Mia never slept without a light, and Mr. Paws stayed buried in a box, its eyes to knowing. The grove remains, its trees whispering to those who dare enter. Campers who return tell of red stars and shadows that move without light. The universe isn't empty, it's alive, ancient, and hungry. Its Gothic secrets carved in stone and starlight. If you camp in Blackthorn Grove, keep your eyes down. The stars are watching. Story 3. The Cursed Lake, under alien moons in the summer of 2017. 4 friends Alex, Kim, Pat, and Dennis set out for a canoeing and camping trip in Minnesota's Boundary Waters, a vast wilderness of lakes and forests where the modern world felt far away. They chose Lake Whisper, a remote spot nestled among rocky shores and towering pines, its waters so still they mirrored the sky like a sheet of glass. Locals in the nearby town of Eerie spoke of the lake with unease, warning that it was no place to linger after dark. The stones around it have old marks, a gas station clerk muttered to Alex, and the stars above it don't act right. Alex, a rugged hiker who loved the outdoors, laughed it off. He'd camped in worse places and never met a ghost. Story that scared him. Alex, 29, was a park ranger with a strong build and a calm head, always carrying a map and a Kim, 27, was a history buff, teaching at a local high school and obsessed with old castles and ancient myths, her backpack stuffed with notebooks for jotting down lore. Pat, 30, was a dreamer, a self-proclaimed UFO hunter who spent nights scanning the skies with binoculars, convinced aliens were out there. Dana, 28, was the group's heart, a chef who loved cooking over campfires, her laughter bright enough to lighten any mood. They paddled across Lake Whisper in 2 canoes, arriving late afternoon as the sun dipped low, casting golden ripples across the water. The shore was lined with massive boulders, their surfaces etched with strange rune swirls and jagged lines that looked like they belonged in a Gothic cathedral, not a forest. Kim traced one with her finger, her eyes wide. These are old, really old, maybe Norse or something older. They feel ... wrong. Alex shrugged, setting up their tents in a small clearing near the water. Just rocks, Kim. Let's get the fire going. Dana unpacked her cooking gear, planning a feast of grilled fish and potatoes, while Pat set up his binoculars, eager for a clear view of the stars. The air was warm, the lake calm, and the group swam in the shallow waters, splashing and joking. But as twilight fell, a chill crept in, and the forest grew silent. No crickets, no owls, just the soft lap of water against the shore. The sky darkened, stars emerging, sharp and bright. But one cluster caught Pat's eye, trio of lights that glowed pale green, pulsing faintly like distant lanterns. Those aren't stars, Pat said, adjusting his binoculars. They're too bright, too ... alive. Like moons, but wrong. Alex squinted upward. Satellites, maybe, but the lights didn't move like satellites. They hung low, almost as if hovering over the lake, and the water below them rippled, though no breeze stirred the air. Mia, drying off by the fire, shivered. I don't like how they look, like eyes watching us. As night deepened, the air grew heavy, and a low hum vibrated through the ground, barely audible but felt in their bones. The water bubbled near the shore, small waves breaking the mirror-like surface. Kim, sketching the runes in her notebook, froze. Listen, she whispered. A faint chant drifted from the lake, not human but melodic, like voices singing across vast distances, old, eerie, and cold. The green lights above pulsed in rhythm with the sound, growing brighter, then dimming, as if breathing. Alex grabbed a flashlight, sweeping it across the water. The beam caught something, a shadow, moving beneath the surface. Sleek and fish-like but too large, its outline blurred by the dark. What the hell was that? He muttered. Dana, stirring the fire. Dropped her poker. Guys, the water's moving too much. There's no wind. The bubbling grew louder, and the chant became words. Though none they understood syllables that twisted their stomachs. Like a language from another world. Pat's binoculars shook in his hands. The lights there splitting, like they're coming down. Above, the green glow separated into 3 distinct orbs, each one drifting lower, casting an eerie light over the lake. The water churned violently now, waves crashing against the rune-covered boulders. A shape emerged from the lake, a figure, tall and slick, its body shimmering like wet scales. Its face a grotesque mockery of human, with wide, unblinking eyes like the green orbs above. It moved silently, gliding toward Dana. She screamed, scrambling. Back, Alex grabbed a paddle, swinging it like a club, but the figure vanished into the water, only to reappear closer. Kim shouted, "It's not alone." More shapes rose from the lake, their forms shifting, sometimes fish-like goiters, sometimes humanoid, their limbs too long, their movements too fluid. The air smelled of ozone and decay, like a storm mixed with rot. The chants grew louder, now, inside their heads. "Join us. Swim in the eternal deep." Panic seized them. Alex pulled Dana toward the tents, but the ground shook, the runes on the boulders glowing faintly, as if activated by the orbs above. Pat dropped his binoculars, his voice trembling. "This isn't aliens. It's something older, like gods, from space, tied to this lake." Kim, flipping through her notebook, nodded. "I read about this sentient people worshipped things from beyond the stars, built shrines to call them. These runes, ... they're a summons." The friends ran too, the canoes, but the water surged, tipping one over. Dana fell in, thrashing as something pulled her under. Alex dove after her, his flashlight cutting through the murky depths. Below, he saw a glow not from his light, but from the lake floor. Stone structures loomed, a sunken temple with Gothic arches and spires, its walls carved with star maps and figures being dragged into voids. Dana was caught in a current, her eyes wide with terror as shadowed hands gripped her. Alex grabbed her arm, kicking upward, but the hands were strong, their touch cold as ice. He surfaced, gasping, Dana coughing beside him. The figures emerged again, circling the shore. Pat and Kim dragged them out, but the orbs above descended closer, now hovering just above the trees, their light pulsing in sync with the runes. Kim, panting, pointed to the temple's glow. "We need to go down there. The runes say it's a gate. We have to break it." Alex, soaked and shaking, nodded. "I saw it. There's an altar or something." They grabbed flares from Pat's pack, their red light cutting through the green glow. Alex and Kim dove back in, the water freezing, the chants deafening in their minds. The temple was vast, its stones ancient, covered in moss and carvings of cosmic horrors, tentacled beings pulling humans into starry voids. At its center was an altar, a crystal embedded in it, pulsing like the orbs above. Alex smashed a flare against it, the crystal cracking. A scream tore through the water, not just sound, but a force, shaking their bones. The figures in the lake wailed, dissolving into bubbles of light. They surfaced, the orbs above flickering out. The lake stilled, the chants gone. Dana, shivering on the shore, looked different. Her eyes glowed faintly green, though she seemed herself. "I saw things down there," she whispered. "Endless stars, endless dark. They wanted me to stay. They paddled away at dawn, leaving their gear behind." The canoes glided smoothly now, the lake calm, as if nothing had happened. Back in Eerie, they didn't speak of it to locals, who eyed them knowingly. Alex quit his ranger job, unable to face deep woods. Kim burned her notebooks, her love of history tainted. Pat swore off UFOs, saying the sky held worse than aliens. Dana cooked again, but her dishes had a strange, metallic taste. and her eyes never lost that faint glow. Lake Whisper hides a truth, its Gothic runes and still waters are a door to a cosmic abyss, where things older than Earth wait, watching under alien moons. If you camp there, don't swim. The lake remembers. Story 4. The Haunted Trail to the Void. In the autumn of 2022, Lee Carter, a 32-year-old writer from Virginia, decided to take a solo camping trip along the Appalachian Trail, seeking solitude to spark his next novel. He'd heard whispers about Raven's Pass, a lesser-known spurred trail deep in the mountains, where old cabins stood like Gothic relics, their wooden frames rotting under moss and time. Locals in a nearby diner warned him against it, their voices low. "That pass ain't right," an old man said, nursing his coffee. "Stars there move like they're hunting." Lee, a skeptic who thrived on quiet hikes and simple pleasures, dismissed it as folklore. He packed his journal, a small tent, and a lantern, craving the peace of the wild. Lee was lean, with sharp eyes and a habit of scribbling thoughts on everything: napkins, receipts, his own hands. He wrote short stories for local magazines, weaving tales of human struggle, but never horror until Raven's Pass. His backpack held essentials: a knife, matches, a worn copy of Walden for inspiration, and a star chart for fun, though he wasn't much for stargazing. He wanted silence, not stories of ghosts or cosmic dread. He hiked into Raven's Pass on a crisp October afternoon, the trail narrow and overgrown, pine needles crunching under his boots. The air smelled of earth and decay, and the trees leaned inward, their branches twisting like Gothic arches in a forgotten cathedral. By dusk, he found a clearing near a crumbling cabin, its windows dark, its door hanging loose like a broken jaw. Strange carvings marked the wood swirls and jagged lines, like eyes staring at the sky. Lee shook off a chill, pitching his tent and building a small fire. The stars above were brilliant, sharper than he'd ever seen, cutting through the black, like shards of glass. As night settled, the forest fell silent. No crickets, no wind, just an oppressive quiet that pressed against his ears. Lee sat by the fire, jotting ideas in his journal, but his pen slowed as a faint whisper drifted from the trees. It wasn't words at first, just a low hum, like distant voices chanting in a language older than stone. He stood, gripping his knife, and scanned the darkness. "Hello," he called, his voice swallowed by the pass. The whispers grew, now forming his name. "Lee. Lee, come see the stars." He looked up, and the sky was wrong. The stars weren't still, they shifted, slow and deliberate, forming a spiral that pulsed with a faint, sickly light, like the glow of something alive. His star chart, spread out on a rock, showed no such pattern. "This isn't right," he muttered, heart pounding. The fire flickered, casting long shadows that seemed to move on their own, stretching toward the cabin. Lee grabbed his lantern, its beam weak against the dark, and approached the cabin. Inside, the air was thick, smelling of damp wood and something metallic, like blood or rust. The walls were etched with more carvings, figures reaching upward, their bodies pulled into a void of stars, their faces twisted in terror. A dusty journal lay on a broken table, its pages brittle. Lee flipped it open, reading entries from 1843 by a settler named Amos Reed. "The stars speak here," Amos wrote. "They offer knowledge, but it's a trap. They pull you into the dark, where time stops, and you fall forever." The whispers grew louder, now inside his head, urging him to look up. He resisted, but the air grew heavy, his chest tight, as if the sky itself pressed down. Shadows moved outside the cabin, tall and cloaked, their forms flickering like smoke. Their eyes were voids, blacker than the night, yet glowing with the same sickly light as the spiral above. One reached out, its fingers long and bony, brushing his arm. A cold jolt shot through him, and he saw flashes in the space, stars that weren't stars, but eyes, watching, waiting, hungry. Lee stumbled back, dropping the journal. He ran to the trail, but it twisted, looping him back to the clearing. The cabin loomed again, its door now wide open, as if inviting him in. The shadows followed, silent but relentless, their whispers a chorus. Join the void. See what we see. His lantern flickered out, and the fire died, leaving only the spiral of stars to light the pass. Desperate, Lee ducked into the cabin again, barricading the door with a broken chair. The journal lay open, and he read more of Amos's words. They come through the stars, old things from beyond. Burn their gate to stop them. Lee's eyes darted to the carvings, a central symbol, a spiral like the one in the sky, etched above, a stone hearth. He realized it was a marker, a gateway tying the past to whatever lurked above. He grabbed matches and tore pages from his own journal, stuffing them into the hearth with dry wood from the floor. The shadows banged on the door, the wood splintering. His hand shook as he struck a match, the flame small but fierce. He lit the kindling, and the fire roared, but it burned green, unnatural, casting eerie light on the carvings. The spiral symbol glowed, then cracked. A scream tearing through the air, not from the cabin but from the sky, a wail like 1,000 voices breaking across the cosmos. The shadows froze, then dissolved, their forms crumbling into dust. The spiral in the sky unraveled, stars snapping back to their places, cold and distant. The whispers stopped, replaced by the soft rustle of wind returning to the forest. Lee sat, trembling, until dawn, the fire's green glow fading to normal orange. He hiked out at first light, leaving his tent and gear behind. The trail was straight now, no longer twisting, as if the pass had released its grip. Back in town, he didn't speak of it, but the diner's old man met his eyes and nodded, as if he knew. Lee stopped writing fiction, turning to warnings, blog posts, letters, anything to keep people away from Raven's Pass. His dreams were haunted by voids and eyes, and he never looked at the stars again. Raven's Pass hides a truth. It's Gothic. Cabins and winding trails are a bridge to a cosmic abyss where ancient horrors wait for a glance upward. If you hike there, keep your eyes on the ground. The stars aren't your friends. Story 5. The Forgotten Fire Pit's Secret. In the summer of 2019, a scout troop from Cheyenne, Wyoming, set out for a week-long camping trip in Ember Hollow, a remote valley near Yellowstone National Park. The hollow was a quiet place, tucked between jagged hills and dense pines, its ground dotted with ancient fire pits ringed by stones carved with strange, star-like symbols. Locals avoided it, whispering about lights in the sky and fires that burned without wood. "Don't light those pits," a park ranger told the troop's leader as they checked in. "They're older than they look, and they call things you don't want answering." The scoutmaster, Mr. Hayes, a practical man who taught math and coached soccer, scoffed. He'd led dozens of trips and wasn't spooked by old stories. Mr. Hayes, 42, was a tall, wiry man with a no-nonsense attitude, always carrying a whistle and a first aid kit. He believed in teaching kids grit and survival skills. With him were 3 scouts. Tim, 14, a bookish kid who loved science and carried a pocket guide to constellations. Rob, 13, a jokester who snuck extra snacks and loved ghost stories. And Sam, 12, quiet but tough, who always brought a small Bible his grandma gave him. The boys were excited, their backpacks stuffed with sleeping bags, marshmallows, and dreams of adventure. They hiked into Ember Hollow on a warm July afternoon, the air thick with the scent of pine and dust. The valley felt cut off from the world, its hills blocking the horizon, the trees leaning inward like Gothic spires in a forgotten church. They found a clearing with one of the old fire pits at its center, 6 stones, each etched with spirals and sharp lines that looked like stars falling to earth. Tim traced one with his finger. "These are weird, like something from an old temple." Mr. Hayes shrugged, setting up tents. "Just rocks. "Tim, let's get camp ready." As dusk fell, they gathered wood and lit a fire in the pit, the flames crackling high. Rob told a ghost story, his voice dramatic, making Sam clutch his Bible tighter. The stars above were bright, sharper than in the city, but one cluster caught Tim's eye, a group of lights that flickered green, pulsing slowly like a heartbeat. "That's not in my guide," he said, squinting. "Stars don't do that." Mr. Hayes glanced up, frowning. "Maybe a plane or something." But the lights didn't move, just hung there, growing brighter as the night deepened. The air grew cold, unnaturally so for summer, and a faint hum vibrated through the ground, like a low note from a distant organ. The fire flared, its flames turning green, casting eerie shadows on the trees. Sam whispered, "Something's wrong. It's like the fire's alive." Rob laughed nervously. "Come on, it's just a trick of the light." But the flames danced higher, and whispers drifted from them, not the wind, but voices, soft and old, chanting words none of them knew, like a prayer from another world. Mr. Hayes stood, gripping a stick. "Stay calm, boys. It's just the wind." But the whispers grew, forming words in their minds. "Look up. Know us. Burn with us." The green lights above pulsed faster, and the fire pit's stones glowed faintly, the carvings alive with light. Tim's hands shook as he flipped through his star guide. "This isn't normal. It's like the stars are talking to us." A shadow rose from the fire, tall and formless, its edges flickering like smoke. Its eyes were twin points of green, light, deep and endless, like the stars above. It reached for Rob, who froze, his usual grin gone. The shadow's touch was cold, and Rob screamed, falling to his knees, muttering about falling through space, endless and dark. Mr. Hayes yanked him back, shouting, "Get to the tents." But the shadows multiplied, spilling from the fire, their forms shifting, sometimes human, sometimes vast and tentacled, like horrors from a nightmare. The troop ran, but the clearing seemed to shrink, the trees closing in. Sam clutched his Bible, whispering prayers, while Tim shouted, "It's the fire pit. It's connected to those stars." Mr. Hayes, heart pounding, led them to a nearby hill, hoping to escape. But the path looped, bringing them back to the glowing pit, the shadows circling closer. The whispers were deafening now, promising secrets of the universe if they surrendered. Rob, still dazed, muttered, "They know everything. They want us to join them." Mr. Hayes remembered the ranger's warning and spotted more carvings on the stones, figures lighting fires to summon star beings, others dousing them to banish the dark. "The fire's the key," he yelled. He grabbed a water bottle from his pack, but it wasn't enough. Sam, trembling, pulled a small vial from his pocket, holy water his grandma had given him for protection. "Will this work?" he asked, voice small. "Try it," Mr. Hayes said, desperate. Sam splashed the holy water onto the fire, and the flames hissed, turning blue, then white. The shadows wailed, a sound like metal tearing across the sky, and the green lights above flickered out. The stone's glow faded, the whispers silenced. The fire died, leaving only ash and quiet. They sat, shaking, until dawn, too scared to move. The valley felt normal again, the stars cold and distant. They packed that first light, leaving their tents behind. Rob was quiet, his eyes haunted, refusing to talk about what he saw in the dark. Back in Cheyenne, Mr. Hayes quit scouting, unable to face campfires. Tim gave up his star guide, saying the sky wasn't safe. Sam kept his Bible closer, praying every night. Rob never joked again, his laughter replaced by a nervous twitch. Ember Hollow hides a secret. Its Gothic fire pits are gates to a cosmic void, where ancient horrors wait for a spark to call them. If you camp there, don't light the stones. The stars are listening. Story 6. The Mirror Woods reflection in the summer of 2023. Jen and Mark, a young couple from Toronto, decided to escape the city for a camping trip in the wilds of Ontario's Algonquin Park. They chose a spot by Mirror Lake, a secluded place, where the water was so clear it reflected the forest like a perfect painting. Locals in a nearby lodge whispered warnings about the lake, saying it wasn't just a mirror, but a window to somewhere else. "Don't stare at your reflection too long," an old bartender told Jen as she bought firewood. "It stares back, and it ain't you." Jen, a graphic designer with a love for adventure, laughed it off. Mark, a carpenter who trusted his hands more than ghost stories, just wanted a quiet weekend with his girlfriend. Jen, 26, was creative and bold, her backpack stuffed with a sketch pad and colored pencils to capture the wilderness. She had a bright smile and a habit of humming when nervous. Mark, 28, was sturdy, with rough hands and a calm voice, always carrying a pocket knife and a small toolbox for emergencies. They'd been together 2 years, bonded by a love of nature and late night talks about life. This trip was their chance to unplug, far from phones and deadlines. They arrived at Mirror Lake late afternoon, paddling a rented canoe across its glassy surface. The shore was lined with tall pines, their branches twisting like Gothic arches. In an ancient cathedral, the water mirrored every detail: trees, clouds, even the two of them in the canoe, like a twin world below. They set up a small tent in a clearing, surrounded by smooth stones that seemed too perfectly placed, some etched with faint, swirling marks like ripples frozen in time. Jen sketched the scene, her pencil flying. "This place is unreal," she said, awed. "It's like a dream." Mark built a fire as the sun dipped low, painting the sky pink and gold. The lake reflected the colors, but something felt off. The reflection lagged, the colors shifting a moment too late. Mark frowned. "That's weird. Must be the angle." Jen nodded, but her humming started, soft and quick. They cooked dinner beans and hot dogs, laughing over old memories. But as night fell, the forest went silent. No owls or crickets. Just the crackle of their fire and the lake's eerie stillness. The stars came out, brighter than they'd ever seen, like holes punched in a black curtain. Jen pointed at the lake. "Look, the stars are in the water, too. It's like another sky down there." But the reflected stars weren't quite right. They shimmered, moving slightly, forming patterns that didn't match the sky above. One cluster pulsed faintly, a pale blue glow that seemed to throb like a heartbeat. Mark squinted. "That's not normal. Stars don't do that." A low whisper drifted from the lake, not words, but a soft hum, like voices singing across a vast distance. Jen's sketchpad slipped from her hands. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. Mark nodded, gripping his knife. The hum grew, forming strange syllables, old and cold, like a chant from a forgotten time. The lake's surface rippled, though no breeze stirred, and the reflected stars swirled faster, shaping an eye that stared up from the water. Jen grabbed Mark's arm. "It's watching us." The fire flickered, casting shadows that danced on the stones, but the shadows moved wrong, stretching toward the lake like they were drawn to it. Mark stood, pulling Jen back. "We need to go now." But as they turned, the reflection in the lake changed. Their tent was there, but their mirrored selves stood still, staring up at them, their eyes glowing blue like the pulsing stars. The whispers became words in their minds. "See us, step through, become us." Jen screamed as her reflection moved, raising a hand that wasn't hers. Mark swung his flashlight, but the beam reflected back, blinding him. The lake churned, waves breaking, and a figure rose from the water. Mark's double. But wrong. Its skin slick, like wet clay, its eyes voids of blue light. It reached for Jen, and she stumbled, falling near the shore. Mark tackled the figure, but it was like fighting smoke. His hands passed through, cold as ice. More figures emerged, Jen's double among them, their movements jerky, like puppets on strings. The lake glowed brighter, the eye in the water widening. Jen, shaking, grabbed her sketch pad. Noticing the stone's carvings in her drawing, they matched the swirling eye below. "It's a gate," she shouted. "The lake's a door to somewhere else." They ran to the canoe, but the paddle snapped, the wood crumbling like ash. The figures closed in, their whispers deafening. "Join the mirror. Live forever in the stars." Mark Stubble touched him, and a vision hit in space. Gothic spires floating in a void. Stars that weren't stars but eyes, watching, pulling. He staggered, feeling himself slip, like his soul was being tugged downward. Jen yanked him back, her voice sharp. "Mark, stay with me." She remembered a story from her childhood about breaking mirrors to banish spirits. The stones, they're part of it. She grabbed a rock and smashed it against the nearest carved stone. It cracked, and the lake's glow dimmed, the figures wailing a sound like glass shattering across galaxies. The eye in the water blinked, then vanished, the stars above returning to normal. They fled to the tent, huddling until dawn. The lake was still again, its reflections perfect. No trace of the horror. They paddled out with a broken paddle, leaving everything behind. Back in Toronto, Mark aged overnight, his hair streaked gray. Jen stopped sketching, her art too close to the truth. They never spoke of Mirror Lake, but Jen's eyes sometimes caught a faint blue glow in mirrors, and Mark woke screaming about falling through stars. Mirror Lake hides a secret. Its Gothic waters and carved stones are a window to a cosmic void where reflections come alive with hunger. If you camp there, don't look in the water. Your double is waiting. Story 7. The Ancient Oaks, whispering the summer of 2021. The Thompson family, David, Laura, and their 2 kids, Emma and Lucas, drove from Houston to a quiet corner of East Texas for a family picnic turned impromptu camping trip. They chose a spot near Blackroot Hollow, a forested area known for a massive gnarled oak tree that stood alone in a clearing, its branches twisting like the spires of a Gothic cathedral. Locals called it the Whispering Oak, claiming it spoke in the night, its words carried by the wind. "Don't sleep near that tree," a gas station clerk warned David as he bought ice. "It's older than the hills, and it knows things that we shouldn't." David, a practical mechanic who fixed trucks for a living, chuckled. He didn't believe in ghost stories, only in what his hands could touch. David, 40, was broad and steady, with a toolbox always in his truck and a calm way of solving problems. Laura, 38, was a nurse who loved old folklore. Her bedside manner warm, but her mind sharp, with tales of haunted woods. Emma, 15, was a dreamer, always texting or sketching fantasy worlds in her notebook. Lucas, 11, was curious but jumpy. Clutching a flashlight he swore kept monsters away. They packed a picnic basket, a tent, and sleeping bags, planning a day of fun that stretched into an overnight adventure. They arrived at Blackroot Hollow in the late afternoon, the sun filtering through dense pines, casting long shadows. The oak loomed ahead, its trunk wider than their truck, its branches curling like ancient arms. Knots in the bark looked like eyes, and faint carving swirls and jagged stars marked its base, as if etched by hands long gone. Emma traced one with her finger. "It's like something from a creepy old church," she said, half joking. Laura nodded, her eyes uneasy. "It feels ... alive." They spread a blanket for the picnic, eating sandwiches and laughing over Lucas's bad jokes. David set up the tent nearby, figuring they'd camp for the night. As dusk fell, the air grew heavy, the forest silent, no birds, no rustling leaves, just a stillness that pressed against their skin. The stars emerged, sharper than in the city, but one cluster glowed red, pulsing faintly like a wound in the sky. Lucas pointed, his flashlight shaking. "Why is it doing that?" "Stars aren't supposed to move." Laura frowned, pulling her sweater tight. "It's probably just a plane, sweetie." But the red glow didn't blink or drift, it throbbed, slow and steady, like a heart. David squinted. That's no plane, maybe a satellite. But his voice wavered, and he gripped his pocket knife tighter. Emma, sketching the oak in her notebook, paused. It feels like it's watching us. As night deepened, a low whisper drifted from the oak. Not wind, but a voice, soft, old, and cold, like words spoken across centuries. It formed no clear words at first, just a hum that vibrated in their chests. David stood, shining his flashlight at the tree. The beam caught the carvings, which seemed to shift, the stars on the bark glowing faintly red, matching the sky. Stay here, he told his family, stepping closer. The whispers grew, now saying his name. David, come closer. See the truth. The red stars above swirled, forming a spiral that pulsed brighter. Lucas clutched his flashlight, whimpering. It's talking. The tree's talking. Laura pulled him close, her heart racing. She remembered a folk tale about trees that served as gates for ancient beings. Spirits from beyond the stars that fed on human fear. We need to leave, she said, but the truck's keys felt heavy in her pocket, like they didn't want to be used. A shadow detached from the oak, tall and twisted, its limbs like tentacles woven from bark and darkness. Its eyes were red voids, glowing like the stars above, and it moved silently, reaching for Emma. She screamed, dropping her notebook, where the oak sketch now showed eyes that weren't there before. David swung his knife, but it passed through the shadow like air, and a cold jolt hit him, a vision of endless space, Gothic spires floating in a black void, stars that pulsed with hunger. The family ran to the tent, but the clearing seemed to shrink, the oak looming larger, its branches curling toward them. More shadows emerged, their forms shifting, sometimes human, sometimes vast and formless, like creatures from a nightmare. The whispers filled their minds. Join us. See the eternal dark. Lucas's flashlight flickered, its beam weak against the red glow from the tree and sky. Laura, clutching her kids, remembered a tale of banishing spirits by destroying their anchor. The oak hits the gate, she shouted. David nodded, grabbing an axe from his toolbox. He hacked at the tree's base, but the blade barely chipped the bark, and a thick, glowing sap oozed out, red like blood, smelling of metal and decay. The shadows wailed, their voices shaking the ground, and the oak's branches thrashed, as if alive. Emma, shaking, noticed her notebook sketched the carvings, showed a fire at the oak's roots. Burn it, she yelled. David poured lantern, oil from their supplies onto the roots, his hands trembling. Laura struck a match, and the flames roared, but they burned red, unnatural, casting eerie light on the shadows. The oak groaned, a sound like a scream across galaxies, and the red stars above flickered out. The shadows dissolved, their wails fading into silence. The fire died, leaving scorched roots and quiet. The oak stood still, its carvings dark, the sky normal again. The family packed at dawn, leaving the tent and picnic behind. The truck started without issue, as if released from a spell. Back in Houston, David sold his axe, unable to touch it. Laura stopped reading folklore, her stories too real. Emma burned her sketches, her art haunted. Lucas kept his flashlight on every night, swearing he saw red eyes in the dark. Blackroot Hollow hides a truth. Its Gothic oak is a door to a cosmic void, where ancient horrors whisper through bark and starlight. If you camp there, don't light a fire near the tree. It's listening. Story 8. The Eclipse Camp, Nightmare in the summer of 2021. For friends Rachel, Ethan, Sophie, and Caleb headed to a remote desert valley in Arizona to camp during a rare solar eclipse. They picked Shadow Canyon, a desolate spot surrounded by towering rock formations that looked like Gothic spires, their surfaces carved with strange, ancient symbols. Locals in a dusty gas station nearby warned them off. Don't camp there when the sun goes dark, An old woman said, her eyes sharp. The stars come out, and they bring things with them. Rachel, a photographer who chased beauty in wild places, brushed it off as desert folklore. She wanted epic shots of the eclipse, not ghost stories. Rachel, 27, was bold and artistic, her camera bag stuffed with lenses and a notebook for ideas. Ethan, 29, was a geologist, practical and curious, always carrying a rock hammer and a map. Sophie, 26, was a music teacher with a love for old myths, her guitar slung over her shoulder for campfire songs. Caleb, 28, was a mechanic, quiet but brave, with a flashlight and a multi-tool always on his belt. They'd been friends since college, bonded by road trips and late-night talks about the universe. They arrived at Shadow Canyon late morning, the sun blazing, the air shimmering with heat. The rock formations loomed like ancient ruins, their carvings, spirals, stars, and jagged lines, faint but unsettling, like they belonged in a forgotten cathedral. Rachel snapped photos, thrilled by the stark beauty. "This place is unreal," she said, framing a shot of a spire against the sky. Ethan traced a carving with his finger. "These are old, maybe thousands of years. They don't look Native American, more like something else." Sophie strummed her guitar lightly, humming, "It feels heavy here, like the air's holding its breath." They set up 2 tents near a dry creek bed, building a small fire pit with stones. Caleb checked the eclipse glasses, making sure everyone was ready for the big moment. As the afternoon wore on, the temperature dropped, and the sky took on an eerie, golden hue. The eclipse began, the moon creeping across the sun, casting a twilight glow over the canyon. The friends sat on a blanket, watching through their glasses, the world darkening around them when totality hit. The sun vanished, leaving a black disk ringed with a fiery corona. Stars appeared, unnaturally bright for midday, and a cluster of them glowed violet, pulsing like a heartbeat. Caleb frowned, lowering his glasses. Stars shouldn't be that clear now. And that color, it's wrong. Rachel aimed her camera upward, but the lens fogged, as if breathing. Sophie's humming stopped. "Listen," she whispered. A low chant drifted from the rocks. Not wind, but voices old, guttural, like a prayer from a time before humans. The air grew cold, the ground humming under their feet. The fire pit flared, its flames turning violet, matching the stars above. Ethan grabbed his hammer, heart racing. "This isn't natural. It's like the eclipse opened something." The carvings on the rocks glowed faintly, pulsing in sync with the sky. Rachel's camera clicked, but the screen showed static. Then, a brief image of eyes violet, endless, staring back. Shadows rose from the rocks, tall and formless, their edges flickering like smoke. Their eyes were voids of violet light, deep and hungry, like the stars above. One reached for Sophie, its touch cold as space itself. She screamed, dropping her guitar, which strummed a single sour note on its own. The chant grew louder, now inside their minds. "See us? Merge with the dark." Caleb swung his flashlight, but the beam bent, swallowed by the shadows. The friends ran to the tents, but the canyon seemed to shift, the rocks closing in like walls. Rachel tripped, her camera falling, its screen now showing spires floating in a starry void, figures pulled upward by tentacled shapes. "It's a gate," she shouted. "The eclipse is letting something through." Ethan, thinking fast, remembered myths Sophie had shared about ancient tribes using chants to seal cosmic doors. "We need to fight it, maybe with sound or something." Sophie, trembling, grabbed her guitar, strumming a desperate tune, but the strings snapped, one by one, as if cut. The shadows multiplied, circling closer, their whispers promising eternal knowledge if they surrendered. Caleb noticed the carvings of a figure chanting over a glowing stone, banishing dark shapes. "The rocks, they're the key." He grabbed a loose stone, its surface carved with a star, and threw it into the fire pit. The flames roared, turning white, and the shadows wailed, a sound like glass shattering across the cosmos. Ethan and Rachel joined in, smashing the glowing carvings with rocks and Caleb's hammer. Each hit cracked the stones, dimming the violet stars above. Sophie, voice shaking, recited a prayer from an old myth, her words clumsy but strong. The chant faltered, the shadows retreating, dissolving into dust. The eclipse ended, the sun reappearing, washing the canyon in light. The stars vanished, the carvings dark, the fire normal again. They packed in silence, leaving their gear behind. The truck started without issue, as if released from a spell. Back in town, Rachel deleted her photos, unable to look at them. Ethan quit studying rocks, haunted by their secrets. Sophie gave up music, her songs tainted. Caleb kept his flashlight on at night, swearing he saw violet eyes in the dark. Shadow Canyon hides a truth. Its Gothic rocks and ancient carvings are a door to a cosmic void, opened by the eclipse's shadow. If you camp there, don't watch the sky when the sun goes dark. The stars are waiting,